Ready to elevate your work? The Snapdragon X Elite processor powers through demanding tasks with cutting-edge AI, up to 37% less power usage, and features like live translations and enhanced search. Focus on big ideas while your laptop handles the rest. Learn more at shi.com/partners/Snapdragon.
About 2033, we would actually hit a point where it would cost more than the GDP of the world to run the internet at the current growth rates that the internet was growing. So we have less than a decade to figure this out and find better ways to use AI and do so power efficiently. And honestly, I think on-device and endpoint AI is where we're going to have to migrate the majority of the work that we do every day.
In the world of technology, heroes are everywhere. They're overcoming disruption, delivering sustainable outcomes, and fearlessly forging the future to solve what's next. Join me, Ed McNamara, as we meet the people and businesses driving change in our constantly disruptive world. This is Innovation Heroes, a podcast brought to you by SHI. When you think of the AI you interact with on a daily basis, what comes to mind? ChatGPT, Amazon, Google? What do they all have in common? They all live in the cloud. But the technology world is shifting gears and a new player is taking stage: on-device AI. In a time where speed, personalization, security, and efficiency define success, this game-changing technology is rewriting the rules for business and consumers alike. By processing data locally on devices, on-device AI eliminates latency issues, enhances privacy, and enables real-time decision-making, opening doors to innovation like never before. From transforming industries like healthcare and retail to powering smarter IoT systems, on-device AI is driving a revolution in how we interact with technology. Today, Mike Belcher, Director of North American Commercial Channels at Qualcomm, will help explain why this shift matters, how it's empowering businesses to operate faster and smarter, and the exciting possibilities it unlocks for the future. Mike, welcome to Innovation Heroes.
Oh, Ed, glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Mike, you've been in IT and computing for a couple decades now, and I'd love how you got into this space.
Yeah. So, I've been in mostly on the OEM side at Gateway and HP for 25 years, and I've been here now almost 3. And I didn't start off my career there, but I've been in tech since I was in high school and before there was anything called Windows. And so I was very lucky. My mom actually never went to college, but she self-taught herself PCs as they were coming out. So as the first 286s and 386s came out, she taught herself computer language, taught me while I was in high school, and kind of created a love affair with the computer with me ever since. And so I was always engaged, involved. We were doing, I think, some of the first online banking. My mom worked for Bank of America at the time, and she was one of the first guinea pigs of actually doing that. For those who remember, as we would log into the internet, right? Yeah.
So today we're talking about on-device AI, which seems like a new idea, but it really isn't. Before the internet, all AI was done on device, right? And can you tell me a little bit about that, and what are some early examples?
Yeah, maybe I'll give some of the examples that I have personally, right? So in past life, I was responsible for looking at emerging technologies when I was at HP, really so that we could help decipher and where we believe that technology would end up, right? And so how would we help higher education institutions, for example? One of them revolved around the amount of research that's being done at these R1 institutions, right? There is a ton, and there's so much data that they're collecting, and there weren't really great ways to analyze that data locally. And so some of what we started doing at HP were building these super high performance workstations. And so imagine a tower device. We started working with NVIDIA very early in that stage to develop the capabilities and software to actually drive the GPUs to process this data and do that at a localized level. And so what it allowed to do via funding that these institutions would get, they could buy these $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 PCs and then use those continually over and over again for all of their data research, right? And mine those numbers, really come together with better answers, right, for the research they were doing, but do so in a very safe way, all localized and not having to go to the cloud for that data. So it was one of those kind of really unique cases that in me went, oh my gosh, there's huge opportunity for this, right?
Yeah, the role of higher ed in those early days, it just cannot be overstated. And then cloud computing became a big thing. So, why did we make the switch to cloud-based AI, and what advantages did that provide for businesses and consumers?
Yeah, so I think the big turning point, as you already alluded to, is ChatGPT, right? And when that came out with generative AI, and you could ask any question and get some pretty darn good answers, and even if they weren't good answers, they sounded good. so
Right.
so some of that work you just had to do there. We couldn't afford to put all these devices at 50, 60, $70,000 on everybody's desk, right? And so the ability for us to take advantage of the compute power, to take advantage of the data up in the cloud, really became the only way to make this effective, and particularly where we wanted to ask these really complex, really large questions, where you needed these huge data sets. We really had to do that in the cloud. And the early days of us cutting our teeth on device, I think really led the way for them to start to realize, oh my gosh, we could do this in the cloud. In fact, it may be the only way we could do AI and
Right.
advanced AI very quickly. Yeah.
Right. So now we're migrating back to on-device AI. And to start, what are a few examples of on-device AI that exist today, and why is the tech world making the switch from cloud to on-device for AI?
One of the reasons why we have to move from cloud to endpoint devices is the cost of what it takes to drive that AI up in the cloud, right? And so it is very costly for all the AI providers right now. Every inquiry will cost you, between 5 cents and 60 cents, depending on what it is that you're doing.
Oh,
And if you're
wow.
like me, you ask a lot of questions of AI. I do so. So I'm one of those folks driving the costs up for all of these providers. But there's so much of this AI that you don't have to. You don't need those ginormous data sets. You don't need these enormous computers that require lots of cooling to keep them operational. And honestly, the advent of NPUs, or neural processing units, has really led that way, right? Of how do we do AI, and with technology that was designed for AI. And that's exactly what the neural processing units are. We started development of those, 12 plus years ago, and actually deploying them. If you've got a Samsung phone with one of our chips in it that's 5 years old or less, you probably have a
Right.
pretty powerful NPU in it and don't even realize it, right? So we've been deploying NPUs for a number of reasons. They are so efficient. And so if you think about what it takes to drive these giant GPUs and power them and cool them up in the cloud versus what it takes to run a neural processing unit, we can run 45 trillion operations per second on an NPU and do it all day running less than 300 milliwatts of power, right? It just sips power to drive itself. And if we did that same thing with a GPU, we'd be using probably 60 or 70 watts of power.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's about 150 times more efficient to do it on the device. And if you have a very large data center in your neighborhood or in your
Yeah.
hometown, because they are sucking the power out of the grid right now, right? To run these and to cool them. And there's a huge concern right now around how do we power our homes? How do we light and heat our homes when these data centers are sucking so much power? We've actually done some great research around this, and by 2040, we would actually hit a point where it would cost more than the GDP of the world to run the internet at the current growth rates that the internet was growing. Now that
Wow.
was before ChatGPT, before the NVIDIA revolution up in the cloud. We did that same data research earlier this spring, like in March, and we factored that we're going to reach that same level about 2033. So we have less than a decade to figure this out and find better ways to use AI and do so power efficiently. And honestly, I think on-device and endpoint AI is where we're going to have to migrate the majority of the work that we do every day. We started working with Microsoft because of our background in this in the cellular world of how could we take a much more power efficient model like ARM and ARM instruction sets and actually drive Windows on ARM with a RISC processor, but also embed NPUs. So now Microsoft could completely redesign their OS to take advantage of that NPU. Now it requires a lot of change to make that happen,
Right.
a whole lot of improvements into the systems. But boy, the vision for that really started about 4 years ago. And we're already starting to see some really cool things. Like if you haven't seen in Visual Studio Code, there's an app called CodeGen. You basically type in samples of your code and then type in a request of what you want it to do, and it will go write the code for you, right?
Wow.
And so you think of what takes days to do, you can do in minutes now, right?
Right.
And so the ability for us to leverage AI to do these things that it does really, really well, it is exactly what we can do on device, and then not worry about the cloud and this code that might be very discrete and you don't want out in the ether. It's all self-contained on your device.
And I think our audience, which is a pretty technical audience, can understand the benefits of on-device AI. But how do you describe it?
Yeah. So the ability to have on-device, and particularly the way that Microsoft designed Copilot Plus, is
Hmm.
that it's self-contained on the device. It's designed to operate not being connected to the internet at all, right? And honestly, it's incredibly safe and secure that way. One of the things that they wanted to use AI for, and they needed these powerful NPUs to be able to drive it, was in the background AI running all the time. So when you're running a Copilot Plus device, the AI is actually running all the time and it's learning you. It's seeing what you do, what applications you touch, how you write, how you communicate, all of those things. It's learning how you operate. And so I'll give you a really kind of cool example right now for myself. I
Hmm.
travel a ton, way too much, 200 plus
Right.
days a year. And
Wow.
so I am continually behind on email. And so when I finally got my device, and now we've set up Copilot M365 along with our device set, I've started running all of my office applications utilizing the AI. And so for Outlook now, I will ask inquiries when I come back from a long trip and say, please find me all of the last 10 days, every email that's come through that's asking for a response for me, and prioritize them for me. And so in seconds, I get this list of what I need to go hit right away. And I go hit those, and then I do other things, right? So I can actually prioritize my life, accomplish more instead of do more by plowing through all this email that is probably just looking at it and you don't do anything with it, right? I just can ignore those. So there's these types of things that the personalization of the device will enable, that honestly Windows is the only player in this space, and we're the only technology that can drive that currently.
I won't ask you to set the batting order for the people that you get to, but in your email inbox before others, because we don't know who's listening. But when you talk about Copilot Plus, what do you see as the biggest differences than the original Copilot? Like how will users use it differently?
Yeah, a couple of unique ways. First of all, this personalization of the device. I think a year from now, those of us that deploy this, in this year, it'll take about a year. But after you start utilizing this after a year, you're not going to be able to do without it, because the
Mm,
ability to use things like recall and find things in seconds, the ability to have these capabilities like, organizing your data or comparing spreadsheets for you automatically right on the device, not having to use the cloud to do that, not worrying about what data gets set up into the cloud. I think those are just going to become so embedded and part of what we do. You won't be able to go away from a device like this, right? Because
right.
you're not going to be nearly as productive, and you certainly won't be accomplishing more. So I think long term, that's directionally what will happen. So we're at the early infancy stages of that, but we're going to see all kinds of applications now take advantage of these NPUs to completely rethink how you use these applications. And I'll give you one kind of cool example.
Yeah.
So Adobe is one of these players, right? Who, I don't know about you, I've tried to learn Photoshop. I don't have the time to devote to it and to stick with it to be really good at it, right? And so, for them, the ability to have almost every user be able to use Photoshop comes down to AI. So they've redesigned Photoshop to run natively on ARM, and have now in process of developing all the AI features running on our NPU, that you can just say, hey, Photoshop, take the red eye out of this picture. And you can say it, you can type it, you can circle a blemish and say, remove the blemish, right? And you're
Right.
done. So the ability for us to learn how to use these tools really comes down to how do we communicate and using prompts, et cetera. And so you're going to see all sorts of tools like this come out. If it's productivity, if it's security, everyone will be racing on how do I leverage the NPU to provide these really great AI capabilities.
Yeah, I'm on a marketing team, and I have about 7 or 10 graphic designers who ensured that I would never, ever learn Photoshop after a few early attempts, and they were like, Ed, we've got this for you. Why don't you put that down, But everything that I hear them say is that it's just their efficiency and productivity is like going through the roof, for exactly the features that you're using. You talked a lot about the benefits. What about challenges or drawbacks? What are the limits, or what do we still have to be mindful of at this point?
Yeah, so believe it or not, the requirements for Copilot Plus are pretty low. It's like 16 gig, 256 on the hard drive. An ideal is probably like a half a gig hard drive and 32 gigs if you're going to do some heavier duty work on the device. But if you have large data sets that you really need to run, bigger than about 13 billion parameters, that's what we can run really effectively with our 45 TOPS NPU. If your data sets need to be that large, that's the kind of stuff we're going to have to do in the cloud. But 13 billion parameters is still pretty darn large. And so, one of the things that I think we'll start to see is where we need that large data set. We need that super huge compute power. We're going to do that stuff in the cloud, and we'll continue to do so. But almost everything else, I think, will start to migrate to the device because of that efficiency and cost savings. And we're going to see a lot more of, hey, I can download an SLM, a small language model, instead of these large language models,
right?
And customize it based on my business. If I'm an end user, and it may be putting my schematics and my if-when scenarios when our field tech repair is out, right? So that the AI can do that for you. You don't even have to be connected to the internet. The device will just do that for you while you're out on site. I think you're going to see a lot more of that kind of use case with these SLMs really taking the place of what's happening in the cloud, customized to you and your own use case inside of your organization.
So I whenever I get to talk to somebody like you who really sees how these technology is deployed, have you had something in the last 12 to 18 months where you've taken a look and you're like, wait, they're using this where and how? What would you say to that question?
God, so many.
Right.
Honestly, I think when I was at HP, we started using some AI tools to help get to those zero-day attacks, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I think what you're going to hear coming out forward in how folks, you got folks like Sophos and CrowdStrike that are building for the NPU right now all sorts of amazing features and security that we just haven't thought of, right? And part of it is you can use your AI to help you design this and help mm-hmm. you put scenarios in place of how are you going to block this? How do you develop the software to make all of that work? I think you're going to see some really cool use cases for how we use AI in security in particular. Now, you have to have some pieces embedded, right, and running on your CPU there, but I think you're going to start to see the NPU, which typically operates about 7 times faster than a GPU does.
Okay.
You're going to start to see a lot of that security feature set offload onto the NPU. It's so efficient, right? So you don't draw a lot of power. If you're going to draw it on the GPU, you might just suck the battery out of your device, or your fan would never go off while you were running it, right? And so the ability for us to do that locally is a huge boon for security. And as we all know, the black hats keep getting more and more efficient. They're going to be using AI, figuring out how to attack us, right?
They have it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if we think about, right, Windows 10 support goes away in October, I would be really fearful if I was an IT decision maker, not planning on getting off of Windows 10 by October, because guess what those AI black hats will be doing? They're going to be targeting you. And so looking for ways to move forward just on a security basis, I think is going to be really, really important. And then the ability to use these AI security features to combat the AI black hats as they're going after your business.
Are you ready to take your work to the next level? The Snapdragon X Elite processor is here to redefine productivity and power for modern professionals. With cutting-edge AI capabilities, it handles the most demanding tasks with up to 37% less power usage, so you'll stay productive all day without worrying about your battery. Snapdragon X Elite powered laptops also bring AI-driven features like live translations and enhanced Windows search, making multitasking easier than ever. Let your laptop take care of the busy work while you focus on bringing your business-changing ideas to life even faster. To learn more about the Snapdragon X Elite processor, go to www.shi.com/partners/Snapdragon.
From a governance perspective, does having it on device, does that make it easier to manage that it's on device just for obvious reasons, or is there anything that I might be overlooking?
Yeah, it really then boils down to how secure is your device, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if your users are accessing any of your sensitive information now on their devices, your device is as secure and your data is as secure as that is.
Right.
I think I love the way that Microsoft designed Copilot Plus to run encapsulated on your device to
Okay.
eliminate that challenge, right? It was one of those big fears. It was a big fear I had, 4 or 5 years ago as we started looking at ChatGPT. Oh my God, how do you keep your data safe? How do you
Right.
make those things happen, right? And so the
Right.
ability for us to do this self-contained, and honestly, they did it as much for security as they did for the personalization of the device. So this AI running all the time, learning how you operate, helping you find files, et cetera, all stays self-contained on the device. And so as long as your device is secure, all of that is secure, right? So this now starts to really boil down into how do I ensure that my end user devices are as safe and secure as possible? One of the cool things about Windows 11 is Microsoft has changed some of the mandatory things that happen. And honestly, part of it was in conjunction with us as we were developing our chipsets for them. We actually developed a security processing unit that is one of those processors along with an NPU and CPU and GPU that is loaded with Pluton. And so now it gives Microsoft the ability to have control over those devices. I was traveling in the Boston area a few months back when a major malfunction occurred when somebody did an update and it knocked down a slew of PCs across the
Yes.
nation. The airlines all went down, et cetera.
Mm.
I was trapped. And, so you see it kind of firsthand. And part of that was Microsoft didn't have control over being able to get those machines booted up. They had to rely on a third party. This will now eliminate some of that sort of challenge and make the devices much more secure right out of the box. So there's some really kind of unique things that are happening as Microsoft has developed this operating system that improve almost every aspect, right? Not only just your user experience, but your security as well.
So forward looking, one of our last questions, I always put way too much time on this. I was going to say, what can we expect from this technology in the next 10 years or so? I'll say, how about the next 2 years?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple that
Yeah.
I think about and I can wrap my own brain around, right?
Right.
But this idea of the personalization and the use of AI, I think one of the things you will see in the next 2 years is we think we're going to get to somewhere around 60% of all devices sold by 2026 will be these Copilot Plus AI PCs. So big majority are going to go. But if you think of that divide between the 60% that have it and the 40% that don't, I think you're going to have this it'll be a digital divide, but it'll be an AI digital divide, right? So if your business is trying to compete with others who are utilizing AI, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And so it's one of those things that, I'm urging everyone, start to do your work now, start to dive into this, understand it, understand the most important tools that you use. Talk to those ISVs. Are they going to be moving their software to an NPU? Are they going to be leveraging AI? Because you don't want to buy devices now that you won't be able to do that a year from now, 2 years from now, right?
Right.
So everything that we're hearing from Microsoft, anything that's deploying right now will have at least a 3+ year lifespan just for the AI capabilities. But believe us silicon makers are not going to stop. It's just going to continue to explode and give us the ability to do what I think is my second premonition, is that we're going to see a whole lot less importance on CPU and GPU, and we're going to see a whole lot more emphasis on NPU. As the NPUs can run in the hundreds of trillion operations a second and do so sipping power, I think we're going to see a whole lot more of our applications learn that they can run on the NPU and do so much more efficiently than they can on CPU and GPU, which will, again, reduce our power draw, give better battery life, all of those things that we hope for out of devices. I think that's going to take us till the end of the decade, but you will see a whole lot more importance there. So if you haven't done some research around NPUs, that's a good place to start as well, so you know and understand why they're going to be so important.
Yeah, the end of the decade is only 5 years away, so not too long.
I made that prediction. I figure I've got 5 more years left in this industry, Ed.
Oh,
and
don't worry.
My hair will be gone.
As you know from reading the analyst predictions, nobody actually follows up on those, right? So,
Absolutely.
We'll sunset this podcast 3 years from now. You have nothing to worry about.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So for those who are not lucky enough to sit next to you on a plane or at the airport Chili's, 200 days out of the year, like where can listeners go to learn more about your work and on-device AI technology?
Yeah, our website does a lot of great, or provides a whole lot of great information. Microsoft has a lot of great information on Copilot Plus. So I'd urge you to search Microsoft Copilot Plus and find some of the training and research they have. If you want to go to our website, it's Qualcomm with 2ms.com/AI. And we have a huge amount of data available, right, to go learn more. Plus, we are adding all sorts of content into SHI's portals so that you have access to all of that at SHI. So you can reach out directly to your SHI representative, and we can ensure that you get that information as well.
Excellent. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. So as we continue to push the boundaries of what's possible, it's clear that on-device AI will play a critical role in shaping the next era of computing. Whether it's powering personalized experiences or streamlining industrial operations, the potential is limitless. On-device AI isn't just the future, it's already here, changing the way we interact with technology in our everyday lives. A huge thank you to Mike Belcher for sharing his insights and expertise. And until next time, keep innovating and stay ahead of the curve. For Innovation Heroes and SHI, I'm Ed McNamara. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Ready to elevate your work? The Snapdragon X Elite processor powers through demanding tasks with cutting-edge AI, up to 37% less power usage, and features like live translations and enhanced search. Focus on big ideas while your laptop handles the rest. Learn more at shi.com/partners/Snapdragon.